Yes, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Two Blues Tuesday, and it's just me this time. Yeah, real life is going to be real life, and guess what? I'm ill. If I do start coughing in this video, just give me the time of day. But we're just going to analyse Chelsea, where we are at the minute, how everything's been going in this early stage of the season, how I'm finding the team, and all my grievances. Before we get into it, don't forget to give us the old like, comment, and text below. And subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. But without further ado, we'll get straight into it. Chelsea, listen, coming off of that fantastic win against Liverpool, not only is it a fantastic result, it was a fantastic performance in my opinion. I feel like we played them to the wire, and I feel like we answered a lot of questions that a lot of people had. When people want to talk about the best midfielders in the world, who do they talk about? They don't talk about Caicedo, and they don't talk about Caicedo anywhere near enough. Caicedo should be the first name on your list because in the Premier League, he's far and away the best player in central midfield. You know, in the world, there is the argument for it as well. There are a couple of other players which I feel like you have to give them their credits. You know, Vitinha's been fantastic. Couple other players that I can't say that I've watched anywhere near as much as I've watched Caicedo. But Caicedo, what he does, it's not just the defending, it's not just the ball winning and the passing that he's so effortlessly and flawlessly good at. You know, getting in the way of these mistakes. Now he's added that third element into his game of not only bringing the ball forward, because that is the second element that everyone knows about, that pure midfielder instinct of taking the ball, pushing it up forward in distribution. If he gets a sight, he pulls the rifle and he clots it top bin. And it's not just the first time he's done this. He's been impartial to a pop shot from range. He's just making it part of his bag. Now it's in his, it is his bag. And we can't deny that. We have to stop doing this conversation about Caicedo versus Gravenberch and Rice. Because he's not with Gravenberch and Rice. He's with Vitinha and them, man. You heard? He's with them Barcelona lot. You know what I mean? He's in this upper echelon. He's with the Bellinghams. And I know Bellingham's been a bit stinky, but when he's on his day, he's all right. And this is the kind of bag that we're talking about with Caicedo. We're talking about the upper echelon level of midfielder. And I don't think it's up for debate anymore. People can say what they want and talk about good performance, yeah, but it's a consistent performance. It's just now he's scoring goals, which means people are going to finally start paying some insight to it. And, you know, this is something that I've had grievances with Enzo Fernandez about. Yeah, he can spot up in the right place and he can get into those zones on the wide end of the box where he can score those tap-ins. But when it comes to the small things, you know, I don't think Enzo is as good defensively as Caicedo, and I think that he's all right when it comes to that distribution and that placement of his passes. But once again, I don't think that it comes close to what Caicedo is able to offer. And at 22, if not, he's 21. I'm pretty sure he's 22. The kid is so young and he's so talented, and he brings so much to this Chelsea side. He gives us such hope. You know, he gives us such emphasis in midfield. And, you know, the small things that we're doing right and the small things we're doing wrong, they're emphasised by how good of a player Moises Caicedo is. Even when Cole Palmer doesn't show up, even when we're riddled with injuries, this guy is playing every minute of every day and he doesn't get injured because he's a strong man. He's a unit. Now, talking about Chelsea as a whole, you know, I've been impressed with us to some degree this season. I think a lot of people haven't been. You know, I put us to potentially win the title this season. And that looks a long shot at the minute. You know, I think we've dropped some stinky points. We've had some pretty hard games so far, some pretty physical games. I thought that game at Brighton was emphasised by, the loss was emphasised by that red card. And discipline has been a problem. You know, if you want to include Enzo Maresca's against Liverpool, technically it's 3 games in a row now where we've gone with red cards in the game. And I don't like that. You know, I feel like there is a discipline problem in the club. I feel like a lot of the players are starting to lose their rag and their tether. And I feel like we've got to, you know, pack it in, if you will. I think we've got to chill out a little bit. I feel like we've got to remember that we need 11 players to see out these games. And Enzo Maresca's got to the point now where he's just joking, you know, at least we can see out games where we have a red card in them. And the opposition nowhere near the level of the Premier League that we should be facing. But I can understand where he's coming from. You know, if you're not laughing, you're crying. And we've done an awful lot of crying. So I would rather just laugh at it and try and spruce it up from the inside out. It is a couple of players that, you know, I have been surprised about their discipline. You know, Trevor Chalobah, pretty brazen challenge. goalkeeper. I never expect that from Robert Sanchez, and I expect an awful lot from Robert Sanchez negatively. But a red card 5 minutes into a big game like that is not something that I would really expect, from him, particularly when we're playing a team like Manchester United on that day, which is a team that I feel like we should have bent and folded respectfully. I just feel like we're the better side, and especially when Manchester United are struggling to pick up wins at the minute, the fact that we're one of them, it is concerning. It is frustrating. But I don't look at this as a flawed season. I think that a lot of teams that go on to win the league or have great seasons, they can start off a little bit shaky. I feel like we've overplayed a lot of football, and I don't think that that's a hot take. And I think that that can be, once again, shown with the amount of injuries that we've had to deal with in this season. It's been a very rough season injury-wise. And, I've heard in the last couple of days that Reece James is now injured again, which is just... I just need a second to calm down before I even go into what I wanted to talk about. The fact that Reece James isn't being selected for England because he's picked up an injury is just absolutely infuriating. Our backup centre-backs are being injured now. I don't know who's going to arrive and when, who's going to land and when. But I put it down to the amount of games that we played at the back end of the season after playing in Europe and then going straight into a Club World Cup tournament. We had about 20 days of rest in the calendar year, and we're in October now. It's getting to that point of contentious frustration where I feel like we're punished by our success, we're punished by how good of a club we are, and how we are able to balance these multiple tournaments at the same time. How we're essentially forced to. I don't feel like we have much of a choice. It's not like we're gonna just let PSG win or lose the smaller games. The only game we lost in the Club World Cup was against Servette, and I think we had a 19-game stretch. Servette wasn't even in that. That was in the Conference League. Yeah, we lost one right at the beginning to one of those Brazilian sides, Flamengo, if I'm not wrong, and it just won everything since. And we've gone on a 19-game stretch in that period where we were winning games left and right, and we looked good doing it. I feel like we were able to impose that Chelsea style, that aggressive style, and I think that all mounted into the final. And I've spoke about this a few times, but playing PSG at their own game, lining up with that 4-2-3-1 that they like to play, and kind of fighting fire with fire, beating them to the punch on those counter-attacking breaks. And I think Hakimi got completely caught and found out in that game. Not to say he's not a fantastic player, and he's continuing to have an absolutely amazing season over in France. That's what I've been told and what I believe. But you play a team like Chelsea, and we will find the holes and we will capitalise. So I am not as frustrated as a lot of the other Chelsea fan base can be, and I've said this a few times that I find the Chelsea fan base to be bordering on irritating at this point, because when there's calls for Maresca out, after we've had multiple injured players, multiple red cards for egregious challenges, things that you can't look at. When you look at a manager like Bredgen from Manchester United, Ruben Amorim, and he can't even watch his penalty taker. He can't even watch Bruno Fernandes take a penalty. He can't even watch the penalties against Grimsby Town. I think that it goes to show there is a gulf in confidence and quality. Rumours circulating about Cole Palmer's not happy with the management. I wouldn't believe it for a second. And I feel like this all stems from an irate Chelsea fan base. And it really does frustrate me. So, all things considered, I'm not as mad as a lot of the other Chelsea fan base are with where we are at the minute, because I can understand it. I love this club. I support this club. I will always support this club. I will always have love for any player that decides to put on the royal blue, particularly even if they in a Garnacho situation. I know there was a lot of people that weren't a fan of that. I was very happy with that. Once you come into this club and you slap that jersey on, you're a family member of mine. You know what I mean? I've got love for you. I've got time for you. There are the exceptions when certain players have frustrated me. I've been frustrated with Badia Shiel. I've used to have massive frustrations with Cucurella. I've had frustrations with Fofana. I've had frustrations with, Enzo Fernandez. I've had frustrations with Caicedo early doors. I've had frustrations with a lot of these players. Nicholas Jackson, who's currently off. But I can't say that there isn't a part of me which has love and hope that they can perform. And that's not from a selfish want of my team to win everything. I mean, it might be a part of that, but I want these players that sign for this club to have individual successes as well. And that's why I believe Cole Palmer should have been ranked higher in the Ballon d'Or. I mean, maybe pretty apt, all things considered, with how the back end of his season went. But yeah, I think that the main frustration for me this season has been how the Chelsea fans have navigated our queries and our concerns. I feel like we could have been a lot more family based. I think we could have had a lot more love for the players and understanding of the players, and not just hate people because they'd be getting injured and they'd be getting red cards and there's a discipline issue. But understanding the root of the issue is not our own fault. The fact that we've been overplayed, fair enough, maybe the red cards have been our own mistakes, but maybe it's the board or the management's mistake for not wanting to sign a new goalkeeper. Maybe that's us holding out hope for Mike Penders to come back in when he's coming off loan from Strasbourg after great signs of life last season. Who knows? Maybe we don't want to commit to a world-class goalkeeper knowing that they got 12 to 18 months in them before we end up replacing them with someone who's got the quality to be one of the best in the world. But I just wanted to come on here today and just very, very lightly vent my frustrations with how things have been going, and show some respect to the players like Caicedo who have been showing up. Cole Palmer will show up again when he's back from injury. I know he will. He's a world-class football player, and although there's that video of him celebrating and I think it's with the Sugo and he ends up pulling on his shorts and people are talking about it's a reniggle of his injury, I wouldn't listen to it, man. Like, I'm just going to hope that this guy spends the next, I think at this point, 5 weeks left of his injury to just bake off and just relax and just rest. It's such a why, but rest his groin and rest his muscles and just come, still another why. But come back in and maybe that's a why as well. But just get back into the fold and be the confident player that I know he can be when it comes to the wide players. Esteval Willian, chef's kiss. That boy is different gravy. He is mustard. And I know that he is. If you're watching Chelsea, you know that Esteval Willian is mustard. When it comes to Joao Pedro, nothing I haven't seen that I don't like. I think he's great. I think he plays off both feet. Maybe he could shoot more and cut in and try and square it off to the top of the box a little less. But I feel like, he's playing the tactics that he's been told to play. And once again, speaking of the tactics, Enzo Maresca's my manager. He'll be my manager for as long as he's at the club. And I don't have any queries with him. I think that everyone shouting Maresca out is, I think they're delusional, to be totally honest. I think that they're unfair. And I think that, you get rid of Maresca now, I think we're putting us in a worse situation than we are. And that is a pretty hard thing to do. I think we're in a pretty bad situation as is. But all things considered, we're still where we should be. We're still pushing for those top 4 places. We're still pushing to come in the top 2. Realistically, we're still in a title race. You look at the point difference. If we make 6 points on Man City, we make 6 points on Arsenal, and on Liverpool, we're right there. We're right at the top. So no complaints for me right now. Keep the blue flag flying high and show love. I've been holding back a cough for 13 minutes and 12 seconds as of this point. So I'm going to love you and leave you. But God bless. Take care of yourselves. And don't forget, stay lucky and stay holding that blue flag right up in the air and keeping it moving. Up the Chills.